These are way better than takeout. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. My name is Tamara. Today we are in the kitchen cooking up some delicious meal ideas that can save you some money, keep you cooking at home, but still have similar meals that you might want when you go out and eat. Eating out right now is absolutely atrocious with pricing. Like, just the three of us to eat can be anywhere from $30 to $90, just depending on where we're going and what we are getting. So I've put together some delicious meals that you can make at home to save you some money and still be able to feed your family those delicious restaurant quality meals. Let's go ahead and get cooking, y'all. We are changing up a classic, the KFC Famous Bowl, but y'all, honestly, I love this version so much better, and I will just be making this for now on. It was so good. I'm gonna go ahead and get started off with my mashed potatoes. Y'all know my crock pot mashed potatoes are my tried and true absolute favorite thing, so I'm getting those going in my crock pot. I will have the recipe linked down below, but I have just washed and peeled and cut up my potatoes. I added them into my crock pot, covered them with water, and then I add in some chicken bouillon. I'm just adding in garlic powder, salt, pepper, onion powder, paprika, season with your heart. You want those potatoes to taste good. And then you're just going to mix everything together, put the lid on it, and let these cook on high for about 4 hours. Now that it's been several hours, it's time to go ahead and finish up everything else so that way we can eat. I've got some corn there. I've just cut off the cob. I think I had about 4 cobs that I cut off and added into that pot. And then I'm just going to add in some butter, a little bit of salt. That corn was super sweet. It was really good corn. I didn't need to add any sugar or anything, which is what I normally do. I normally add a little bit of sugar to the corn, but this corn this year was so good, it does not need it. And then for the chicken, I just got a super thin cut chicken breast, and I'm just giving that a season on both sides with some like chicken seasoning, but you use any all-purpose seasoning or seasoning that you like on your chicken. But I'm just going to season that on both sides, and then we will get that cooking up in my pan. I'm just going to get that chicken cooking up in this pan with a little bit of olive oil. Now, since your chicken is super thin, it's not going to take long to cook it all, and you don't necessarily have to cook it all the way through because you will be finishing it in the gravy. Now, I thought I hit record when I was going to start the gravy, but looking back at all the footage I have, I cannot find it. So I just cooked the chicken on both sides. It gave it some color, and then I removed it from the pan, added in a little bit of butter, and then added in a little bit of flour, and I made my roux. And then that's what y'all had seen there a second ago. I had started my roux, and then here I'm adding in my water and chicken bouillon powder, beef bouillon powder, and then I add in some seasonings. The recipe that I loosely followed for this homemade gravy, I will have linked down below so that way y'all can have the recipe. And I do apologize for not getting that in this footage. I swear I filmed it, but I guess I didn't hit record. Once I add in the rest of my seasonings, I'm just going to give everything a stir together. Now, I do have this on like a low medium just so it's kind of lightly simmering on top. You don't want it to burn or scorch at the bottom. You just want to bring it together, get it nice and creamy. And I'm telling you, this homemade gravy is so much better. This whole meal was just so much better than going and getting the Famous Bowl at KFC. I'm not even playing. And I know that these are not exact copycat recipes. These are just delicious at-home versions of some of your restaurant favorites. Once that gravy comes together, I'm going to go ahead and add in that chicken and just give it a few minutes. Make sure you check the temperature, of course. The internal temperature of fully cooked chicken is 165. So once your chicken is up to temp, you are ready to eat. This is so good. while that chicken is marrying together with that delicious gravy, we're going to go ahead and finish up these mashed potatoes. I'm going to take and drain these in the sink, and then to the crock pot, we are going to add in a little bit of butter and some evaporated milk. I choose to do evaporated milk. You can do regular milk, non-dairy milk, whatever you use for your mashed potatoes. Cream, it doesn't matter. But we're going to add that into the crock pot, put the lid on it. Now it is on warm, and we're just going to let that heat through. Your mashed potatoes will whip so much better if you bring everything up to the potato temperature. You don't want to shock it by adding in your cold dairy or non-dairy. If you want nice, light, fluffy, delicious mashed potatoes, bring all the temperatures up together, and so that way you're creaming everything at the same temperature. This is 1,000 times better than going to the restaurant and getting the KFC bowl. You know what's in it. It's absolutely delicious. And for me, this was super cheap. The potatoes were free, and I had everything else at the house here to make this delicious meal for my family. For us to get pizza out at a restaurant, it can be anywhere from $30 to $50, just depending on where we go and what we get. I love making pizzas at home. I try to do this at least once a week, and pizza for us is super simple, and it is so cheap. I can make 2 homemade pizzas for us for about $10 to $12. I make homemade pizza crust, which I always have everything in the house for. I will make sure to have the recipe that I've been following for several months. It is my favorite tried and true recipe. I'll have it linked down below for you guys. But having the homemade pizza crust, you add whatever toppings you want. I make home canned pizza sauce. Literally, this is such a cheap meal for us, and it is so good. Of course, you can customize them, add whatever toppings you want, make them however you want to. We love the classic cheese and 1 pepperoni. We also do a chicken Alfredo. We do a barbecue chicken. We have so many favorites that we like. This night, I just kept it simple and did 1 cheese and 1 pepperoni. Once I got everything added, I'm just going to add these into a 400-degree oven and get them cooking up. But pizza night is definitely a favorite in my house. This past week, we celebrated our 10-year wedding anniversary. We have been married for 10 years. Luke was my high school sweetheart, and if you don't count the times that we broke up and got back together like every high school sweetheart does that I know of, we have been together for 16 years. Is that not crazy? So I wanted to treat him and do a steak dinner. I had everything here at the house except for the ribeye steak, so that's all I had to pick up, and I looked up and found some on sale. So this made this meal even cheaper. To go along with it, I did some roasted potatoes, and I'm also doing some creamy Brussels sprouts, and y'all, this was so good. I had my mom make this for me for my birthday dinner, and I just didn't get enough of it, so I wanted to make it again. So the recipe that I'm using, I will have a link down below for you guys. I've got some Brussels sprouts there I have just washed and cut up. I added in some heavy cream, some minced garlic. I'm adding in salt, pepper, onion powder, just season with your heart, and then I'm just going to toss that together. I did add some cheese. Now, the recipe that I will have linked used Parmesan and mozzarella. All I had was like a Colby Jack blend, but y'all, it was so good. I think you could use any cheese you wanted to for this. It would just kind of change the flavor profile. So I added in some cheese. I'm going to mix that together, and then I'm going to get that in that greased casserole dish right there behind the bowl. And then I'm going to top it with more cheese, and then we're just going to put this in the oven about 375 for about 30 minutes. For my potatoes, I have just washed and cut up some of my potatoes that were given to us. They were locally grown, and y'all, they were so good. The best potatoes that I have ever had, I think. They're so good. Other than my purple potatoes that I grew myself. Those were really good as well. But I have just coated them in some olive oil, and then I like to add a couple tablespoons of my homemade dry onion soup mix, and that's it. I give them a toss, make sure they're well coated in that seasoning mix, and then I add them onto my cookie sheet, and I get them roasted in a 400-degree oven. They're going to take about 20 to 30 minutes. It just depends on how big your chunks of potatoes are. It is best to cook steaks at room temperature, so I did leave these steaks out on the counter while I was getting everything else prepped up. I'm just giving them a season on both sides with some of this 1836 beef rub. I made sure to get my cast iron pan nice and hot before I added in my steaks. Now I set a timer for 6 minutes, and then after that 6 minutes on that one side, I flipped it and set another timer for 6 minutes. I did Luke's steak for 6 minutes on each side, and I ended up doing my steak for an additional 2 minutes just to just to get it to my liking. I like mine a little bit more done than he does. But that is just going to depend on, how you want your steak. If you want it medium rare, or well done, that's just totally up to you. When it was a couple minutes from being done on that second side, I added in a couple tablespoons of butter on top of each steak with some dried rosemary, and then I just took and let that melt and kind of just basted those steaks with that delicious rosemary butter, and these were so flavorful and delicious. I guess Luke's going to keep me for a couple more years because he really enjoyed coming home after a long day of work to a delicious and really cheap steak dinner. Pollo Bandito, Pollo Supremo, Chef Special, whatever you call it at your Mexican restaurant, this is always a go-to for us, and fixing it at home is so good. I've got thin cut chicken breast there. I'm just going to give it a coating of olive oil, and then I'm going to season it up with some adobo seasoning and some cumin. I did add a little bit of pepper. I just kept adding it until I tried to get all of the chicken coated, and I just let that marinate in the fridge for about 30 minutes to an hour, and then Luke is going to grill this on the grill outside. Now, I'm not claiming that this is authentic in any way, so nobody come for me. This is just my version of how I make this at home. We aren't fans of refried beans, and so I always do black beans whenever I fix this at home. I'm just going to add in 2 cans of my black beans there, and then I'm just going to add in some chicken bouillon powder, some cumin, and a little bit of garlic powder just to give it some seasoning. Then I'm just going to let those heat through. Now I'm going to make some quick and easy Mexican style rice. The recipe that I'm using, I will make sure to have linked down below for you guys. I've used it several times and it is a favorite of ours. I have just got some white rice there that I have just rinsed until the water came out clear, and then I've added it in with some oil, and I'm just going to kind of move that around over about medium-high heat, and we're just going to get that nice and toasty with some color. While that is toasting up over there, I'm going to go ahead and make a quick queso. Now, this isn't how I normally make it. I was working with what cheeses I could find. I normally do like a white cheddar and a pepper jack, and I could not find any white cheddar in block. So I used pepper jack and I used Colby jack. Like I said, that's not my normal, and I didn't prefer this flavor for this, style meal, but sometimes you got to work with what you have. I will have my tried and true recipe that I love. Actually, it's a crock pot queso. I'll have that link down below. It is my all-time favorite, but for some reason I was having a hard time finding the cheeses that I normally use. It had been a little bit since I've actually made this at home, but you just want to melt that down with some heavy cream. I did add in some green chilies, and it's just a quick at-home cheese, quick queso. Like I said, it wasn't the exact recipe that I normally use and flavor profile that I was going for, but hey, it worked. Once the rice had some color on it, I'm going to go ahead and add in my chicken broth, my tomato sauce, and then my seasonings that the recipe called for. I'm going to bring that to a boil, reduce the heat. We're going to put a lid on it and just let that cook for about 20 minutes. And then turn the heat off and let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then you'll just fluff it with a fork. And this is my favorite Mexican style rice recipe. Here's everything all done. We have got our chicken, our queso, our rice, and our black beans. Now, even though my queso didn't turn out perfect, this was still a super delicious supper. The only things I didn't make was the tortilla chips, and I did set out flour tortillas in case anybody wanted those as well. Even with grocery prices being as high as they are nowadays, it is still so much cheaper to feed my family at home. Keeping a well-stocked pantry, fridge, and freezers definitely helps me make these restaurant and fast food style recipes right in my own kitchen for super cheap. I really hope y'all enjoyed today's video. I hope it gave you some new meal inspiration, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye, guys.